here's our poll question today. It's on X, at 1080 The Fan. Pertains to, as you might imagine, the college football playoff. By the way, we got the lowdown, the LD, on Heisman finalists.
Yeah.
We're going to get them within the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Yes.
And it's coming from Monday Night Countdown.
With Ryan Clark's giant cowboy hat.
Well,
and bolo tie.
They are in Dallas.
Yeah.
So we'll let you know. Okay, here's the poll question today. On X, at 1080 The Fan, for Oregon, which of these college football playoff games would you most want to see? And these are all possibilities, okay? Lanning versus Dilly Dilly. You know what that means?
Yeah, that's Kenny Dillingham. Which would happen in the...
that would happen. That would happen in Dallas if it happened.
You would each have to win a game.
Ohio State in L.A., Texas in Dallas, or Georgia in Atlanta. Vote. And vote hard. All of those things could happen.
Georgia with the backup quarterback, by the way. It sounds like Carson Beck is donezo. Looks at the whisper is the UCL injury.
Do you think that, well, keeping with the poll question, we can talk about Carson Beck later.
Yeah.
And Georgia's chances without Carson Beck later. But which of those would be the most interesting to you? Because it is true that Oregon could have to go through 3 straight in the SEC.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You could get Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia, potentially.
Yeah, the craziest one would be there is a path, and the most likely path, if chalk holds out, where you, to win a national title, would have to beat Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia in back-to-back-to-back
And
weeks.
Texas would be in Dallas.
Yes.
And Georgia would be in Atlanta.
Yes.
And Ohio State would be in L.A., which is why I put all 3 on there.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think the most interesting game is probably Georgia. One, the brand, Dan Lanning. The last time you saw Georgia, 49-3, it was an embarrassment. I think that's the one.
Was in Atlanta, right?
I do believe the national title game is in Atlanta.
No. The 49-3 game was in Atlanta?
Yes. Yes, it was. The, quote, neutral site.
Yeah.
So I just think that, in general, to me, would be the most interesting one. Texas would be really good, too. I mean, the answer is either Texas or Georgia, but Georgia would be for the national title game. Texas would be for the right to go to the national title. So,
tell you what.
Georgia. Give me Georgia.
I'm down to 2. I want to see them play Arizona State. I think that would be fun.
Sure.
Lanning's defensive mind against Dillingham's offensive mind.
So Arizona State, in order for that to happen, Oregon would have to beat the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, and then Dilly Dilly would have to take out the winner of Clemson and Texas, which should be Texas.
Correct, and they would meet in Dallas if they played.
Yes.
I think that one, or Texas, playing Texas in Dallas is juicy. One, Georgia in Atlanta, not as sexy without Carson Beck. Already played Ohio State. So I think the Oregon-Texas matchup in Dallas, I don't know, I might vote for that one.
Yeah?
Yeah. With a little side dish of Dilly Dilly.
Well,
I think that'd be cool to see them play.
I just know that if and look, we sit here and I know, like, everyone's from Oregon is outraged over...
What are they outraged about? I don't even know.
The draw. I mean, my God.
Dirt, they're the number 1 seed.
Yeah, Dirt wouldn't shut up about it.
Might be coming up in Stock Watch as well.
Joel Klatt was losing his mind about it.
So they think that they should be reseeded?
Well, I mean, the idea is that Oregon being the number 1 seed and clearly the best team in college football, they've proved it all year long, that they have the toughest path. Again,
do they?
If it holds up, you will play Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia, which, regardless of what the seeding says, are probably the second, third, and fourth best team in college football. Whereas you look at a team like, I don't know.
Penn State.
Let's take Penn State, right? That Penn State has to beat SMU, and then they'd have to beat Boise State, and then they would have to play some incarnation of Indiana, Notre Dame, or Georgia. That is a better path, but it's an extra game than what Oregon has to play.
I mean, I think don't you feel though that to win a title this year, you're going to have to beat 2 of the Big 4, and by the Big 4, I mean Oregon, Texas, Georgia, or Ohio State.
And this is what,
don't you think?
You're 100%.
Oregon, there is a scenario, like you said, that Oregon may have to go through 3 of those, and that is tough. Yeah. But again, they get a bye. They don't have to play for 24 days.
Exactly. I think that people would just rather have the draw in the bottom half of the bracket that
I get
that
it.
Boise's getting or something like that.
Well, and now Georgia's quarterback's hurt. So yes, that half of the bracket looks tougher or looks better, easier than the top half.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think that the whoever wins, it is not going to be easy.
No.
Right? You're going to have to go through a couple of those big time teams.
And this is what first off, let me just say, I love the fact, even though I only want to make football love with Dan Campbell, I love.
You mean Dan Lanning?
I want
Stop
to make
it.
sweet, sweet football love with Dan Lanning. That's a fake AI drop. It was never said. It's ridiculous. Keep this up, Buck. You're gonna get Luigi'd.
What?
This is ridiculous.
Whoa.
Hey,
We're going there.
God.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
That story is bananas. But like this is with Kirby Smart wins the SEC title, and he immediately starts bitching about the schedule that he's had to play.
That might also show up in Stock Watch.
Whiny little bitch. Everyone
God.
and I
That
hate
whiny bitch.
the
What do we?
the biggest thing about college football that I despise is that everyone, no matter what,
Bitches.
bitches.
Yeah.
And this is where I will, even though I don't want to make football love, only Dan Campbell. This is one of my favorite things about Dan Lanning. You will not hear
That's
boo
true.
one
That's absolutely true.
about Oregon having to potentially play Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia. And I freaking love, you know what he's going to say? I don't care. Tell me where we have to go play. And just once,
You know
I
what?
want to hear Nick Saban or Lane Kiffin or Kirby Smart or Dabo, just once.
He addressed that tough
think
path
that's fair.
on the selection show. Here's what he
Yeah.
had to say.
What an opportunity.
Thank
right?
you.
I mean, look, in our world, we always talk about red light, green light. Focus on the things you can control, right?
Bingo.
That's what we're going to focus on.
Amen.
And, you know, winning a national championship isn't supposed to be easy. You can ask Coach Saban. It's not supposed to be easy. So if our path's a little bit tougher, kudos to us if we go through it and take care of business.
Yes. Like and listening to the Joe Klatz of the world talk about how, you know, that this should be set up, you know, for the top seed in the NFL, right? Which is supposedly the toughest of all, you know, to get through. Guess what? The AFC can be harder than the NFC. And there can be a team. Remember when New Orleans had to go on the road to play a game against the Seattle Seahawks in the Beast Mode Quake? That Seattle team was a sub 500 team, but New Orleans had to go on the road to play them because they won their division. Right? I'm sorry, but the path to get to the Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills is harder than it is the Detroit Lions. And you don't hear Sean McDermott bitching and whining about the path that he has to go through. Yes, he's going to have to go through the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, he's going to have to go through the Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome to the world. College football absolutely loves to sit there and play the violin for whatever circumstance. I just could not believe that Kirby Smart, in one of the first comments he made about winning the SEC, is to take a shot about the road schedule that he had to
And
play.
directly blame the commissioner.
It's just as if the commissioner and the SEC doesn't do everything they can to protect you. And so that's my thing about, I just, if you're an Oregon
They played
fan,
8 games in the state of Georgia. They're fine.
if you're an Oregon fan and I hear you complain about the path forward, I'm just going to look at you dead in the face and be like, dude, quit being a whiny bitch.
So here's the thing.
Dan Lanning ain't going to complain about that.
The NCAA and the college football playoff and all these powers that be, they have certainly opened it up to criticism
Sure.
by making it so subjective. And I think that they want it that way. Like when you think of because you saw the presentation of the college football playoff bracket yesterday or Sunday.
Yeah.
Wait, was that yesterday? Was yesterday Sunday?
Yesterday was Sunday.
It is
That
Monday.
was
Today's
yesterday
Monday.
morning.
Yeah.
It was a long weekend, a lot of
Yeah.
football. When you saw that, what did they make it look like? The whole presentation.
What are you talking about?
They made it look like
the
March Madness.
Yeah, March Madness.
Because they had reporters out at each of the different parties at SMU and Clemson and this and that. And what I'm getting at is they love all of this debate. They love that you're sitting there hot over people bitching about X, Y, and Z. They love that Kirby Smart's griping. They love that there's controversy between SMU and Alabama. The reality is some of these narratives, I think particularly the SMU-Alabama one, are kind of absurd.
Yeah.
Like that was not... Alabama doesn't really have a good debate. I mean, they certainly, because it's subjective, they can present their argument. It's not a very good one, but I think the College Football Playoff Committee wants that because that's what creates the Joel Klatt tweet, which which goes viral. That's what creates the debate and the conversation around their sport. They love it. We're falling right into the trap, and they don't want to change it. I mean, I think that I just feel like that's part of the fun of, well, it may be annoying to you. It doesn't bother me because I roll at a lot of it, but I think it helps the sport. and I think they want it that way, and that's part
Well,
of it.
we're going
But
to talk about it for the next 2 weeks. Maybe not us,
Exactly.
but the whole college football
that's
world
right.
has fodder for controversy.
Well, and we're going to talk about the Alabama SMU thing. The one thing you said, which I could not agree more, is Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
And his attitude.
I love it.
I don't know how many coaches, I can think of two off the top of my head, and I watched every second of all of those games. I think there was a third one, but the two coaches that jumped off the page at me as bitching about something that they cannot control, which is ultimately going to hurt their team and did, one was Rhett Lashley and the other was Steve Sarkisian. And Dan Lanning just doesn't do that. He
No.
takes that whole
I love it.
variable or that whole element because he knows he can't control it, even if he may think that there's a disparity in calls or they're not calling holding or they're calling too much holding, whatever. He doesn't care because he knows he can't control
it's
it.
not worth their time and energy.
And that ultimately helps his team because his energy goes to a different place. Sark was the worst at it. And look at what happened with Texas.
Yeah.
They blew it.
Blew it.
Because he's over there bitching about, like, that halftime interview with him was a joke.
Yes.
And I get it. He may be pissed and he may have a point. But, dude, you're doing no good sitting there griping about all the holding calls.
You're certainly not helping your players.
If you didn't see his halftime interview, he basically just said, well, I hope they start calling him on the other team.
Yeah.
And dude, your players cost you so many points in the first half by your own penalties.
Yes.
So I don't know, man. I agree with. I think that gives Lanning. Well, it's one of the reasons that makes Dan Lanning one of, if not the best coaches in college football, right there.
I agree. It certainly makes him one of my favorites because I just love that he will never say
He won't.
anything about this path forward.
He
And
won't.
I would just tell everyone, if your head coach and your players aren't saying anything, let it go, man. You want to win a national title? I love that he said an opportunity. What an opportunity to, by the way, go stomp a mud hole in the rest of college football, put up the double birds and say, yeah, we did this. And by the way,
Show every blue blood in front of you. You can handle them.
and by the way, chances are it's not going to be chalk. It never is chalk, right? I mean, you could end up playing Tennessee and Clemson, and I promise you that's not a tough path. It's just not. Yeah, this or you know,
Well, look.
or Arizona State or you know, whatever. We always look at something. How many times in the NCAA do we do this? And we look at the draw and we're like, oh, they've got the best draw, and then all of a sudden it turns out that it's
And they lose.
It's nothing that we thought.
Yeah, or the team that gets all the way to the final had the toughest draw.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it matters, but you just got to play it out. I mean, I just think too on the Lanning thing, real quick. More people in life should take a page out of that book.
Yeah.
You save a lot of energy by not worrying about things you can't control,
This is the draw. Go play it.
and it can help you in life.
Yeah.
Look how much it helps Dan Lanning.
He's done pretty well.
Now radio hosts in Portland want to sleep with him.
No. Maybe fool
You know
around
what?
a
I'm
bit,
going to
but-
cook on your grill.
Yeah, and you get a chance to go cook on some people's grills.
But it is, from the coach perspective, it is quite an eye roll to listen to all the bitching. The
Yeah.
coaches, though, they're just
James Franklin talking about
yeah,
penalties. and
maybe
just-
that's the other one. The other one was him. And
By
it's
the way,
just,
there was like 2 penalties. Now,
Two more
there's 2.
penalties.
well,
Now,
let's
again,
not start that
yeah, we'll
right
start
now.
that.
We got a whole segment
whole
on
segment.
Oregon, Penn State.
Yes.
But back to the poll question. For Oregon, which of these college football playoff games would you most want to see? Lanning versus Dilly Dilly, Ohio State in L.A., Texas and Dallas, or Georgia in Atlanta? Does sound like Carson Beck is done. Vote hard on X at 1080 The Fan.